Oh, we're live. Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of H2O. My name is Mr. Strada, and I got my co-host, Mr.
Mario Brundell. How you doing, my man?
What's going on, man? Great week. Actually, an amazing week. How's your week going?
Dude, can't complain, buddy. It's still crazy in the logistics field, and most of my friends complain about it. I actually kind of like it. It's challenging, but we're making good money, so we shouldn't be all complaining about it. So
yeah, there's definitely a lot of money to be made. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But to what extent, right? So, and that's what brings us to today. So a lot of acquisitions, a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts happening. I've been talking about this for years, Mario. A lot of these big boys are starting to get itchy. There was an acquisition, I believe now, that DSV Agility has decided to acquire Air Menzies. That's a big surprise. And I guess the acquisition started at the beginning of the month. So Mario, you're on the forwarding side. So why are all of these companies starting to being acquired? Why are these people bailing out? What's happening? Is it a bailout? Like, are they getting out?
No.
What is it?
I wouldn't call this a bailout. I mean, generally speaking, whenever I was involved in acquisitions, it was always tied to growing, right? And once you're a public company like a Kuehne Nagel or so, right? They have shareholders, and the shareholders expect a certain amount of growth, right? And I think many of the big companies are using this as a tool to grow when their regular growth is not big enough, right? Let's say Kuehne Nagel only goes by 10%, but their shareholders expected to grow by 18%. Well, guess what? The easiest way to do that is to simply say, hey, let's buy another company. And now we can add that to our balance sheet. And oh, wow, now we grow 32%, right? So it looks really good on paper. I think that's number one. Number two, I think the other really big thing is that they all, like, so many companies are so cash rich right now that because they made so much money in the supply chain that they need to find places to put that money.
Sure.
That's what I think is growing this is what pushes all these acquisitions.
I agree, and I think that's what's happened. Especially on the ocean carrier side. They're starting to acquire because they have to spend. Again, those are things that I mentioned last year that I knew that were going to come in within Q1 and Q2 of this year. Yeah. What's really sad to hear, which I agree with you, is I think the first reason you mentioned, which is market share. A lot of these forwarders really, they're limited. They're limited to what they can sell. They're now competing with the big guys.
Yep.
And when I say big guys, I'm talking about carriers. So I think they're very limited, and it's causing a bit of discomfort. I mean,
I agree with you, especially for the smaller forwarders, right? I mean, we're a pretty small forwarder, right? I mean, we have 23 people working for us,
Sure.
And I think it's interesting because you're either, like, I think the small ones, if you have a good offering, you're still going to be fine, and you're always going to be fine because you just outperform these big guys on customer service all day long, right?
But Mario, but I don't want to interrupt, Mario, but I mean, it's kind of pretty crappy for these big companies to sit down at a table and saying, you pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for salespeople, and they can't do it. So now the way you're going to tell people you're growing is to buy someone. There is no talent in that.
There's no talent in
there. Like, that doesn't make you better.
Well, and my argument would be on that front is that I think on top of that 1 + 1 very rarely equals 2, right? Sure. So when one forwarder is buying the other, there's always stuff that's going to fall off on the sideway, right? Customers not following them. They maybe don't like the new procedure. Big salespeople that maybe had very strong relationship with their biggest clients might not agree with the next management group, right? So that's all the things that I've seen when people are merging or buying each other, that many times, like, the top performers are actually leaving, which, if a company made, I don't know, $10 million a year in profit, which they used to buy the company, right? Many times, like, year one after the acquisition, that business unit is not making 10 million anymore. It makes maybe 7 or 8 million, We have seen that a lot.
To me, it's phony growth. It shows a lot of I don't know, Mario. To me, it's just a bunch of hogwash. I mean, if you're a good company, you have good services, you should be competitive. You should be able to be out there competing with the best of them. And to being able to say, hey, listen, my sales team that I'm paying millions of dollars a month to a year to, they can't cut it. So let's just buy companies and make believe that we're bigger and better. That's kind of like the norm in our industry. And now there's I'm not going to say any names of some forwarders where they have some key players that can still make that move. They've got that really extroverted person at the top of the food chain, very sales oriented in many aspects at these forwarders. But at the end of the day, they're not producing. They're just buying to grow. And it's disappointing. So I'm hoping that, people start waking up and realizing, when you see these companies really growing, what it is that they're growing for. Now, I want to go to one company that we never speak about, and that's the one I see and that I don't see, that's acquiring. And if they do it, they're doing it very silently, but they're solidly growing. And correct me if I'm wrong, Expeditors would be an example.
Yes. Well, I think it's Expeditors and C.H. Robinson. I think I would put both of them in the same kind of bucket. And I got to give it to these guys. I mean, they're setting really good strategies and they're growing naturally quite well. And one thing that I always, when I worked for big forwarders, what I always said is that you really want a national way of growing or an organic way, if you will, right?
Yep.
And acquisition should only fuel the organic ways, right? But I think that Expeditors and C.H. Robinson are doing an incredible job on growth and
Agreed.
To grow. I
Agreed.
gotta give it up to these guys. But let's talk carriers for a moment, Mitch, if you don't mind.
Let's do it.
Because
I love talking about carriers.
Huh?
I love talking about ocean carriers.
Yeah, dude. It's funny because my dad has been in the business for 47 years, right? Before he retired. And he always told me, like in the early 2000s, he says, Mario, in 20 years, there will only be 6 carriers left, And back then we had 30 or 40 large carriers, right? We're pretty close to this, right? Because if you look at the market share on the top 5 carriers, it came out to be like something crazy, like 84% of the volumes are being carried by the top 5 carriers. So I'm curious to know what's going to happen next on that. Especially on the smaller ones like an OCL, Evergreen, Yangming, carriers like that. I'm really curious to know what's going to happen in the coming months.
Yeah. I think with respect to Evergreen, I think Evergreen needs to really look into training their captains. For some reason, they seem to run aground all over the world. So I'm hoping that that's going to be acquired and hopefully fixed. But I don't know. That's a great question, Mario. These steamship lines, there's just so much going on. You don't want to get out of the game if you're a carrier at this point, an ocean carrier. There's a ton of opportunity.
There's new carriers coming, right?
Of course.
I know that it's not going to affect us here in the U.S., but Lidl is really, really big supply chain supermarket company. It's almost like a Ralph's or an Albertsons, right?
Yeah.
Or a Kruger, and they decided to start their own shipping company. And they said they're going to market it to other people. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen there. But I think that right now it's a very profitable business, and I think you might see more people go in that route, right? Starting off new carriers.
Well, here's the thing. I would put my hat out there. If there is someone in the United States that wants to start an ocean carrier, call me. I would love to do that. An ocean carrier out of the United States would be great. It's a great step in the right direction. Will it happen? I don't think so. Yeah. But it would be pretty cool. It definitely would be cool. But listen, it's not always all fun and roses when it's with those carriers, Mario. Right now, the carriers are under a lot of heat. Now, some people might be saying, oh, they're making billions. They don't care. I mean, look at what some of these carriers that were accused of collusion told them. Oh, the fines are so small, just pay them, whatever.
Right.
But now let me tell you, baby, Happy Lloyd is getting its tightened up a little bit. They lost, man. They lost big time on a big on some big cases here with D&D charges that they had to go back and pay back
Yeah,
these 11 containers.
and the FMC is finally getting involved in that, which honestly I'm very happy to hear. Because there's
Absolutely.
a lot of small forwarders that are getting put, and truckers that are being put through the ringer with D&D, the
Sure.
merge, because we all know, Mitch, the carriers are making money on that, right? They always claim it's a
Man,
port fee or whatever, right? But I know there's a published rate, and that's the rate what they pay, and
that's right.
especially on detention, right? That's a
That's
pure moneymaker for them, right? Charging
absolutely.
you know what's detention now? $195 a day or something.
And that
It used to
depends.
be $60 a day.
It, but it keeps changing.
Right.
They're trying to figure out. The government is sending letters to these carriers and asking them to please show them how it is that they're coming up with these rates. They cannot do it, or they're not doing it, or it's a very slow process. And that's what we talked about last week. The rates coming down, and now you see Maersk is going to be starting it to go back up. So I mean, I am so glad that these steamship lines are now starting to really play the piper, because
Right.
these D&D charges, Mario, are killing truckers. They're killing forwarders, and especially because those costs, some that are being accepted or not by their shippers or manufacturers, are finally starting to get some relief. Because I mean, this is only 11 containers, and they won like what, close to $500,000 or something, over
Yeah.
$822,000, $58,000 per fine, and that was the U.S. Shipping Act. And you know what's funny is so many people send me messages that the FMC is not that they're not supposed to be involved. There's nothing they can do. They're tits on a bull, whatever you want to call it. I'm sorry, but they're starting to see how this is affecting the United States, which I've been preaching about for over a year.
Right.
And they're destroying it. They're destroying the U.S. consumer market. And the worst thing about it is, here in the United States, we love to question all of the domestic carriers, the trucking companies of, oh my God, their rates are going up for fuel. Okay. It's not like these steamship line rates, their bunker charges are going up. It's their normal rate. It's all of their rates. And it's very upsetting. I'm sorry, I get a little worked up, but they're a
All
bunch
good,
of
brother. I'm with you, man. Like we had a few cases with detention and stuff, and
Sure.
it's amazing. Carriers that we've been doing business with for 20 years, like playing complete hardball with us, and saying,
Absolutely.
nope, you own it, you got to pay it. And I said, dude, help us out here. We'll support you going forward, yada yada yada. And they just don't care.
Have you tried working with a sales rep from an ocean carrier?
Well, the problem is, I think overall with the ocean carrier sales guys, they have very little decision-making power these days.
Zero.
Back in my day, like 5-10 years ago, yeah, they could say, "Hey, Mario, I'm going to waive this for you. Just book 100 containers next week with me." All right.
Yep.
But that's all gone. Now it has to be like elevated. I heard a story about CMA that any detention or demurrage invoices can only be waived by like the CEO in France directly, right?
Yeah.
And guess what? Some little sales guy is not going to elevate this that high and risk potentially his job, for one of his clients. It's not going to happen.
And that's a pity, because and what they're doing right now in our industry, I'm sorry, but those ocean carriers are just going and calling these forwarders and stealing their people. They're really beating them up, man. And I hope they really. Karma is a bitch. And you know what I really like? I'd like to put out there from our last, which I was really excited to. So thank you so much. We had 7,000 views on our last post, so we really appreciate that. I'd like to really put this out there, and I hope we see and we hope you guys share this. But for all you ocean carriers, we would love to have you guys on the show and explain to us what it is that you're doing and what is your vision. And maybe letting us know how it is that you're coming up with rates. Let's see how many responses we get, Mario.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. Well, I think it was interesting. Let's do it again next week. Leak again.
You got it, Mario. As always, it's been great. Have a good week, and we'll touch base next week. Take care.
All right. See you guys.